You're listening to the AFL Unlimited podcast, where we tackle all the hot topics in the AFL and bring you up to speed with everything you need to know in the football landscape. We'll take a look at this weekend's games and have some mixed discussion about what to expect. Let's head up to the box for the opening bounce. It's not the field of dreams, but for North, rebuild it and the wins will come. David Noble backs his process and the first hurdle has been cleared in the Kangaroos progression. The Tigers dodge an orange bullet as the Giants make a costly misfire. The Bombers win a close one and continue to show their youth. And the Dogs get the job done on the road and a loss to Port Adelaide extracts a heavy toll. Welcome to AFL Unlimited. It's just me and Tiz today. We've got a late out in Chook, but Tiz, how you going?
I'm well today, mate. How are you doing?
I'm very well. We'll just have a couple of friendly conversations between ourselves this week. Seems to be getting less and less every week. But
just discussions between two amazing human beings.
Normally we throw to Chook here for the news, but he's compiled some stuff for us here. But there's a few... I mentioned Port off the top having a costly loss, but there's again another week of some pretty big injuries to some key players for some clubs. So obviously Tom Cleary is out for about 6 weeks or so with a broken jaw.
Massive.
Which is huge.
Mm-hmm. Toby
Green and Harry Perryman are about 4 weeks away from returning for the Giants.
That hurts.
Which is big for them. And Darcy Gardner obviously did his shoulder.
Okay.
So some key injuries for some top 8 sides. What are your thoughts on that?
Toby Green is like if he plays, him and Mumford, they generally win.
Yeah.
So it's a huge out for them. He's a great presence. Gardner's really underrated in defence for Brisbane. So they'll try and cover him, but again, it's put to another defender to take another forward. So he's normally a good shutdown defender, sort of at halfback for the Lions. And Cleary's a massive out. Port's key defensive stocks sometimes get questioned a bit, and Alia's helped a bit, but. That means Jonas has to play a little bit more one-on-one against probably maybe the best or second best at least. So, Port may have some issues down back as well, and they've got plenty more issues as well.
Absolutely. Well, they dropped another one at home, which isn't good to see. And talking about dropping one at home, the Saints played Geelong, obviously, and we're not going to touch on this game, but it was a big story about how poorly their kicking for goal was.
They kicked 5 goals 17, and this is not a verse out of the Bible or anything.
Saints 5-17.
But they...
The Book of Brett.
They just misfired completely, and these shots weren't under a lot of pressure. That's probably what... It's 5-17. Sometimes, you play a Richmond or a Sydney, they force you into, rush shots or long shots from outside 50 or from tough angles, but... This was a 5-17 with a lot of gettable shots, and they kicked 7 points in the first quarter, and every chance they had, they just... I couldn't get through the big sticks. The smaller ones they were accustomed to, but
or the woodwork,
and the woodwork as well got a very good workout. But it's a game. It's not to say that if they kick a bit straighter, they definitely win. Do Geelong respond if the Saints kick 2 or 3 in a row? But ultimately, you had probably a good chance to put the Cats away and put a lot of scoreboard pressure on, and they failed to execute, unfortunately, for St Kilda and their fans.
I guess on field too, there's probably isn't that pressure when if they kick 10 goals straight, it's like, oh gosh, we're under the pump here. But I probably think players wouldn't see, they've kicked 7 behinds. I guess if they looked at the scoreboard, they'd be able to see that. But I guess it would have a different feeling to, kicking a goal and being under that immediate pressure. And speaking of pressure, again, I've turned into the segue man in the absence of Chook this week. But
yes.
Rats has obviously commented on the pressure that the Saints were giving out, but not getting any reward for it. You're obviously a Geelong fan yourself, Tyson, so I probably didn't feel that way inclined on the night, but probably reviewing bits of the game, there was elements of holding the ball, especially not being paid correctly in situations.
There's been lots of comments regarding Geelong throwing the ball, and I wish umpires were able to see it and called on all teams. And I think Ratton said there's no point laying tackles anymore. I don't know if it's worth it anymore. They laid 85 tackles, 3 holding the balls. Yeah. I don't think this is a new problem. Clarko's raised this in the past, 110 tackles for 1 holding the ball. This is going back about maybe a year or 2 ago now. So it does seem at certain times in the year the umpires just all of a sudden just go down in the rankings of just paying on the balls.
Yeah.
Like they
get on
they put the whistle
sort of
away.
Trends, don't they? Yeah, it is noticeable sometimes, and it feels like we're going back to that rule of the week thing again. And this week it was the 15-metre kick, which I noticed in a lot of the games I watched. They were calling, and we put it in our group chat as well, where in the North Hawthorne game, the umpire called play on. The ball was still in the air and landed about 30 metres away. It went over the player's head, and they're calling play on, not 15, before the ball's even come down from its flight. So
one that they've been getting wrong a bit lately,
yeah.
That's for sure. But yeah,
Yes.
I think that's it. I think from both sides there were tackles laid by Geelong that could have been holding the ball for the Saints, and probably more for the Saints because they tackled more.
Definitely the Saints had a few on review there. And following on from Ratton's comments, our old mate Damien has had some comments of his own in regards to what he thinks of Marvel Stadium, which have been perceived a lot of different ways.
We hate playing here, Damien says. I don't know you can get away with that. I wonder if the AFL will get it please explained. I don't know if that's come out already, but that's some really strong comments. And I mean, if you're David Teague or someone else, you probably don't get away with that. But when you've won 3 premierships, you can probably say what you like. But yeah, flirting with danger there, I think. But
they were really harsh comments, were they?
Well, they dominate. Yeah, absolutely. They dominated the Saints there a few weeks back, so it's not as though that performance wouldn't suggest that they hate playing here. But that's an interesting mindset, telling the fans and the world that kind of, is that in the mindset of Richmond when they come to Marvel that we don't want to play here? And
really, it just tells other teams they're vulnerable because they're not comfortable.
Yeah,
and it's just probably not a good look, isn't it? Like, they won on the day, and I guess those comments would probably be compounded if they lost. But really, it was one of their best wins in recent history. They were down by 28 points, undermanned midfield, and the Giants were absolutely flying. Hogan had kicked 4 goals in the second quarter, and now the attention's sort of been taken away from that great win, and this is what we're talking about instead of the game, unfortunately. But some weird comments there from Damien.
I mentioned David Teague before, and that I suppose rolls into his comments about Cripps. Probably didn't go the way he would have liked. What did you think of that? And
he was obviously had an interview during the week about shooting down the rumours about Patrick Cripps having a fractured back, which came to a surprise to many people. And then after the loss on Sunday, he came out and said and apologised, basically saying it was one of the worst press conferences he'd done because he was stressed and frustrated about that issue being brought up, and it was an issue. It was correct, but it was just something that happened in the past. It was a weird one. There's probably better ways to handle situations like that. Just saying, I don't want to comment on it, or not just going to water and stressing out and just saying things you don't want to say and screaming at journalists.
It doesn't happen very often where you reveal information you probably don't want to chuck out to the public. But yeah, it's interesting. They often probe for these kinds of questions and in the hope that they get these types of answers. So it doesn't happen very often, but it looks like Teague's just sort of put his hand up there for misfires on quotes and words.
A few misfires this week.
Yeah, there's been a couple at all.
Moving on to our next segment, the untouched moment of the week. Another player I wanted to bring up for the Brisbane Lions. We saw one of the St Kilda players brought up during the week. Callum Wilkie had let about 5 goals on his direct opponents through all year, and I think Starcevich is tracking a very similar pattern for the Brisbane Lions, and he's been a main reason as part of their resurgence the last few weeks. So they're 5 wins straight now, and they look like they'll end up in the top 4 towards the end of the year, and he's been going great guns, and he's only been around for a couple of years, and I know the Brisbane Lions fans will definitely notice him and know what he does, but just for the wider AFL community, I think he's finally starting to get some recognition this year for what he's actually been doing, and he's been doing it very well.
Very underrated, and would internally be rated very highly with, I suppose, the defensive role he does. His carry from the back half's really good, and obviously difficult to beat in a one-on-one, so nice. That was very touching.
It's a touching tribute to Brendan Starcevich.
In the untouched moment of the week. So
that's how you did
you go. Some big games.
We mentioned no one was talking about the Richmond and GWS game, but now we're going to talk about it. So,
well, that's what I'm here to talk about.
Absolutely.
So, it was Richmond, GWS, Marvel Stadium, Damien's favourite home ground. Marvel Stadium, is it? Yeah. It is correct.
Cool. Marvel at that stadium.
It is. I'm marvelling at this review. So Richmond won by 4 points. It was so frustrating. I was having a bit of a flick through the scores throughout the game, and they were up by 15 in the last quarter. Giants, they let them back in a couple of times, and obviously we know what happened. But I just thought, the next time I check my phone, guaranteed Richmond are going to be up at the end of the game, and I checked and they were full time 4 points, and I was just like, you've got to be kidding me.
You were pretty annoyed at this, mate.
Very. Could you tell? Literally, if the Giants were able to beat the Tigers, I don't think they could have won the premiership. But the fact that they have given them another inspirational win, they'll now believe, even without 5 of their best midfielders, well, Cochin, I'm going to forget all these names. Lambert's out. Edwards is out. Presti is out. And there's one more I'm forgetting there as well. Shai Bolton as well. So that's 5 of their best starting mids out. And they've just got a bunch of no-names in there that just somehow find a way to get the job done. But yeah, we don't need to give the Tigers more hope and belief. But unfortunately, the Giants crumbled when it counted up by 28, as you mentioned early on in the third. They had great control of the game. They were in the contest and their pressure was really, really good. But just they couldn't sustain it for the full 4 quarters, and you got to play 4 quarters against Richmond, or 2 if you're Geelong. If you stay in the game and have some really good quarters, you're a really good chance. And as I mentioned, they had 5 of their best midfielders, and you would have thought GWS for the whole game would have been able to probably match it in the contest, but Richmond, as per Parkinson's law, when they just find a way.
Your favourite.
Yeah. GWS won the contested possession count, and I believe every game they've won it, they've won the game, except for this one. Anything that you ever do is always just negated when you play Richmond. 17 marks inside 50 to 9 the Giants way, which was just unbelievable. You never see Richmond's defence sort of out-muscled like that, and that was found wanting, but couldn't get enough on the board.
Hogan was getting easy marks on the lead in the second quarter. It was as lazy as I've seen the Richmond defence, and that includes their loss to Geelong last week.
Yeah, that's crazy, mate. And as you mentioned early on, Hogan kicked 4 in a frenzy in that second term to give them some really good ascendancy. A great team effort from Richmond. Dusty was the difference with 4 goals. It was the only way they could win.
Yep.
And they gave a tag. Yep. I'm not sure if it was a hard tag for Idun. Is that how you pronounce his name?
I wouldn't think it was a hard tag. It was just a matchup for Idun. Yeah.
Yeah. So the only way, again, it's a team effort, and Dusty's the cream on the cake to finish it all off. But you would have thought that's the only way they could win. Would you have just done a hard tag and then just give yourself every chance to win the game?
I would have thought. Probably would have. I'm not sure if there is a better matchup though in that GWS backline. I don't know. I would have even put Sam Taylor on Dusty because he's been probably their best defender of the last month or so, and maybe just let Iden compete with Rewalt, who was pretty well negated for most of the game.
Yep. And
kicked a goal late, I believe. But it's
frustrating game,
ones, especially watching those highlights. And 2 of the goals, Dusty just socked off the ground. There was the first one, which was pretty easy, but the second one, obviously, where he made contact with the goal umpire, which I absolutely have no issues with that. The issue I probably have with that one is that the goal umpire called it a goal, or believed it was a goal, so that was the umpire's call, and then the vision was obstructed on the goal line, and I probably think the ball...
It looked over.
It looked on the line, which I don't think is a goal. Is that correct?
It has to be fully over the line.
It has to be before the line when you kick it. It can't be on the line when you kick it.
It can be on the line. So the moment it's past like the padding and the goal, the flag.
Yep.
That's then a goal.
Okay. Well, maybe
without impeding any posts.
5 centimeters off my judgment.
Yeah. So it would have been very close, and might have not been fully over.
Yep.
If it wasn't fully over, then it's a goal.
Well, that was some potential controversy there, but once again, Dusty gets the job done.
Yeah, and they celebrated like madness too.
Yeah, it was big for them. Because I think they probably knew that they were not done, but it was going to be very hard for them with Brisbane coming up this Friday night.
Yeah, it'll be a very tough game for them. But we go down to Tasmania, and a crazy result here.
Yeah, absolutely.
For your game,
the North Melbourne Kangaroos
beat
the Hawks, and we both sort of had a chuckle during the week about. We tipped North last week against Collingwood, and they played the worst game ever. And then we tip Hawthorne this week, and North come to play. So
spewing, mate.
No, I was pretty happy for North actually. It's not good to see a team lose every week, and you don't want there ever to be a winless team throughout a season. And they obviously got the win. Cunnington and Simpkin were fantastic. I think they finished with 26 clearances between them, which is insane. And I think they had 7 or so in the last quarter just between them. And I don't think. Any Hawthorn player had more than 1 for the last quarter.
Yep,
which is insane. They just were on an absolute rampage, and they just couldn't finish. They couldn't just finish it off, and it sort of took it right to the end of the last quarter. But they did get the job done. You can see there's obvious signs of youth there, prosperous youth at North Melbourne with Larkey, LDU, Simpkin. Taron Thomas probably had his best game for the club, 3 goals.
He was good.
And he's contesting his 1-match ban this week. I didn't even know he got a suspension, but he knocked CJ Jaff on his backside. I think they were just contesting the ball, and just it was a big clash there. And I don't know the exact injury to CJ, but I wouldn't have thought that would have been worthy of a suspension, considering Bailey Fritsch got off his very careless, semi-deliberate action at the same ground. But for the Hawthorn side, they're going to get absolutely smashed in the media this week, and I don't think I'm on the boat of smashing them. I still believe that they are going through a rebuild, and I'm of the same opinion that if you're going to be patient with North, be patient with Hawthorn as well. I don't think their fans would have expected much more out of them this year. Obviously, it's never good to lose to the team that's on the bottom of the ladder, but there are some questions probably about their list in general, about who they have on their list. That the talented youth is obviously Kazitsky. Hardwick's a bit older now. CJ's come through this year. They've lost Will Day. Probably the only question really is why Burgoyne was on the list still. I think they'll probably carry him to 400, which I think is fair enough. We've obviously seen Melbourne do that with Nathan Jones, but it's probably just one of those things. You want to send him off in the right way, but there's probably a lot of senior players that won't be on that list anymore at Hawthorn. Jack Gunston, Luke Bruce, Liam Shields. Yeah. And
I mean, Sicily, who's an absolute rock down there, he's out for the year. So that's a really big out for them. He's like really attacking and a very good defender as well. So
absolutely,
they're definitely missing him, and just some generalness.
Carlton and Hawthorne next week. That's going to be a big game.
Huge. For
both teams. I think Hawthorn will think they're definitely a chance against Carlton, and I think Carlton will be... They have to beat Hawthorn.
They might go in as favourites, the Blues. I don't see how Hawthorn could go in as favourites, but it's a big game there. And I mean, the midfield battle, it's not as though they're up against... they're up against Burgoyne. Wingard was in there as well. You got Mitchell
hasn't been back to his 100%.
Amir as well. So it's not as though they're up against nobodies.
Warpaw hasn't fired a shot since his second season, I think. He was awesome. He just hasn't been that player since then.
He's definitely...
One of their best and fairest, didn't he, in his second year?
I believe so. It was whenever Tommy Mitchell was out, which might have been in 2019. So he really fired there, but since he's sort of come back, it's just not quite happening for them. But I think they'll obviously get attacked by the media a fair bit. Obviously, they've got some key personnel out, and they're just in no man's land at the moment. They've got some really old players that they probably need to move on soon, but they can't get rid of all of them at once because they need to be somewhat competitive.
Because then you end up like North Melbourne.
That's right. And they're probably if that day wasn't a hit in the face of Hawthorn saying this is where you're at, don't know what will be. So
absolutely.
That's a bit of a wrap up of that game, and nicely done, though.
Absolutely, and there's another game to touch on here from Chook, who, as we mentioned before, is late out with illness or some form of medical related injury or something like that.
Late out.
Late in the warm up.
That's right.
So it probably just gives us a chance to have a casual chat about this game.
Quick chat. Yep.
Pretty good from the Bulldogs.
I really wanted to tip them. I was just like Port Adelaide at home, but even that's not guaranteed. And I don't know. Port aren't in a great space at the moment.
Yep.
I'm nearly writing them off.
Yeah, really? Writing them off?
Just about, yeah. I think they've shown a way. They've been, capitulated against West Coast. They were obviously
smashed,
dominated there.
Brisbane, they got smashed.
Brisbane, they really got defeated. And they're losing games at home, so I'm really just about writing them off. I'm just like one bad game away from saying they can't win the premiership.
As we mentioned before, Cleary drops out for 6 weeks, and
Butters is
out forever. Out for an extended period now with nerve issues in his leg, and we know that Port are going to be playing some big opposition in the coming weeks. We know they're playing Geelong soon after the bye, so they'll probably win that by 100 points. But
they'll get the job done there. That's for sure.
They'll have to have a big performance this week. I don't know who they've got next week.
We'll have a look here. We've got
Collingwood
at the MCG.
They'll have to win that. MCG. Oh my G.
Oh boy, wow, G.
The Dogs tis.
They're right up there, aren't they? Yep. They're just about grand finalists
already.
with the way they're playing. I'm really nervous to play them, and we're playing them in Geelong in the coming weeks. So that's going to be a massive game. Their midfield's just absolutely elite, and obviously they've got, down back's not perfect, but again, they don't let oppositions get a lot of inside 50s because their midfield's so good, but they run and spread, their contest work. Libba's one of the most underrated players in the comp and should get an AA spot.
They're in and underrated players because he's just down on his hands and knees all the time, just getting the pill out to...
Literally.
I think David King called him the Liberator because he takes his teammates to freedom. He just does the dirty work, gets the ball out to them, and then just lets Bont kick these amazing goals or gives it out to McRae to hit Norton on the chest. So... It's a great analogy.
Brownlow night's going to be very interesting with the Bulldogs. There's going to be so many players taking votes off each other. You almost couldn't pick a Bulldog for a Brownlow.
Just like null for that game. Everyone gets 0.
That's right. But I'm a bit concerned about Port, but Western Bulldogs not doing a lot wrong. Norton's playing really good footy. Is Bruce playing up forward? There was talks
Bruce
back on,
is
but down
playing
back.
forward, but another injury, Easton Wood hamstring, 6 to 8 weeks. So I think there has been talk about Bruce going back and potentially Jamara Ugle-Hagen debuting, which I would be all for. And I think that just goes to show the maturity of the team. If Bruce is able to selflessly sacrifice his position, and he can't kick 10 every week against North Melbourne, but he is a good mark. He's a good, strong, solid player, Bruce. He has been really good this year, and he has that confidence now in his playing ability, because there was stages last year where he just looked shot as an AFL player, and I think if he goes back and plays that intercepting role like Easton Wood does and just break even in one-on-ones,
fill the void.
That's really going to help the Dogs. And bloody get Jamari, and I just want to see him in and see what he can do, because he looks like the next Buddy Franklin.
Just don't ask Bevo about it, all right? He might get a bit tested.
He's just got like a knock on the door, and Bevo's like at the front. Don't
you listen to your press conferences? Don't you do research?
Amazing goal from Waitman. Did you see that one where it hit the top of the square and he just kicked it over the back of his head?
Yeah, I don't see those goals very often.
Barely even looked at it. He just sort of celebrated straight away. But
I reckon I've seen 2 or 3 of those goals ever. Bradshaw, Scotty Lucas,
Luke Parker.
Luke Parker. So it's probably 3 or 4 I've ever seen in my life. So I love it when players just have a crack and just take a shot.
We've got Shorty, who's going to comment on the Bombers and Fremantle game. So he's mailing in his Brownlow votes, mailing in his review for this game. So we'll listen to him quickly.
I'm going to take a look at the Bombers and the Dockers, and it was a tight one, and it was probably a battle of 2 sides that aren't going to contend too much this year, but there's a lot of real talent in there, some youngsters that played really well, and I'll talk about a couple of those guys in a moment. But the Dons were quick out of the block, kicked at the first 3, I think it was, and the Dockers, probably a young side developing. At times on the road they've been left wanting, and when the Bombers got away to that sort of start, I was thinking, I wonder if they'll be able to fight back or if they'll drop their heads a touch, which has happened at times, but they were great. They were able to fight it out, get in front, and then, you could argue they really should have gone on to win it, but the Bombers were also impressive. They rallied hard, and it was tight all day. Not, like I said, not 2 sides that are banging down the door for top 8 or anything, but it's the youngsters that, are really giving both supporter bases a lot of hope. In the end, it was Tipper with a late one, handy little bounce, Braden Ham, and then Zaharakis was able to put through a point late in the game to make it 7 points, which, with the time left, made it impossible for the Dockers. So the Dons got home by 7 points there, but I'll tell you what, we've mentioned a few of them, but Harry Jones is a hell of a lot to like for the Bombers. Parrish just keeps doing what he's doing. McGrath continues. They're back 6, Hind, Redmond, we know Ridley back down there. So Cox was rested. There's a lot to like, and Perkins always shows a few bits and pieces. And for the Dockers too, I'm almost more bullish on this Dockers midfield. Chera, Brayshaw, Sarong did a really nice job on Merritt. We've been talking about Mundy and Fife throughout the year, but there is a lot of young talent out there on Sunday that I think, if they're not household names now, they soon will be. And once a bit of consistency comes into both these sides' games, then I think they're going to be a threat, from this year and beyond. So, tight game for you Sunday afternoon. Enjoy the pod. I'll be back with my tips. Cheers.
So that was Shorty's review of the Essendon and Freo game. I don't know how much of this you got to saw. It was actually a pretty entertaining game, Tiz.
Saw a little bit of the final term. I saw Tippers bounce, and boy, oh boy, you'd love to be on the end of that. And that was obviously huge. And Essendon were able to obviously stand up late. And, they almost had an absolute hell of where they had a set shot.
And they played
Ham
on,
had it. And then Ham's like, okay, no, I'll kick it in the corridor. mate, take your 30 seconds.
Take the shot, bro.
All you had to do was kick a point if that went the other way,
Yeah.
and then made it a draw, or I think it was 6 points. Yeah, it was 6 points at the time.
That's a draw.
That was just a shocking decision.
Yep.
Luckily, they were able to, I suppose, repel and get it back. David Mundy's looking amazing. He kicked a nice late goal, and he's old class. So, look, two sides. It's obviously definitely building, and that, as Shorty said, they're not going to be jumping straight into top 8 calculations, but they're playing the kids, and they're playing some good brand of footy, and they're good sides at home, generally speaking. Essendon have had a number of quite close games, so they've been in a lot of their games, even though their win-loss doesn't look amazing, but I think 2 or 3 games decided by less than 3 points or something like that. So
their youth is amazing, and they did try and rest Nick Cox, but he had to come on as a medical sub, and it was interesting when he did come on, he sort of changed how the game was played. It moved a lot quicker for Essendon, and actually had a really positive impact for them. And Archie Perkins looks good. Braden Ham kicked a ripper little sausage, Bataki ham. See what I did there? Thank you.
nice one.
For Fremantle, though, I'm actually pretty disappointed in Fremantle. I had them making the 8 this year. I was big on Fremantle this year, and last year too. I was the Fremantle man. They've sort of just fallen away and dropped a couple of games that they shouldn't have. I know they've had big disruptions, obviously no crowds, and then they had to move away from Optus Stadium for their home game against Brisbane, which would be poor. They're still performing to a decent level. They've just lost out on a couple games where I thought they would have shown more, and they did show a bit in this game. Definitely not writing them off or anything and saying they can't make finals, because they still can. But it's going to be very hard for them now, and I think you probably get a free pass in the first year of a new coach with Justin Longmuir being at the club.
JL.
Second year, you probably wanted a bit more out of them, but there's still a bit of the year to go. So I think if they can push towards the 8, if they just miss out, that's okay. That's probably where they expect to be, but they've still got a pretty healthy list. But it's just a shame that they're sort of wasting that good form of David Mundy and probably his last year of his career, which is unfortunate. Yeah.
How's Fife going with the goal kicking? 2 goals, 15 going into that game, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know what he did exactly in that game, but he needs to sort of straighten himself up. Tabner's been pretty consistent for them. He seems to kick 3 or 4 goals every week somehow.
He hasn't been talked about at all, and he's right up there in the common race.
I think since round 8 last year, he's the only player to kick multiple goals in every round.
Doesn't get talked about.
That's pretty good, isn't it? Yeah.
He's obviously a bit older.
Yeah.
I think he's maybe 28, 29.
Yeah, I still would have thought he was like 24, 25, because I've only really recognised him the last couple of years as a player.
Then again, I think he started in 2013, so he might have been like 21
Mature age,
potentially. So it took a while to come on, but last sort of 18 months they've reaped the benefits of those rewards, and they had to wait for Pavlich to almost retire to sort of see how he'd really go against sort of the toughest defenders out there.
Absolutely, and it was a big hole to fill for sure. So you're going to give us a quick wrap-up of the rest of the week's games?
Yes. The Cats, obviously mentioned off the top, escape an inaccurate Saints outfit by 21. There's a lot going on there. Sydney kept the Pies to just 1 goal after quarter time, and that gave them a 30-point win. They, at quarter time, were like, gee, Collingwood play Sydney well, and then Sydney after quarter time, they just played garbage.
They just throttled them.
They sure did. Gold Coast were again disappointing at their
home. Careful with
deck.
that one, mate. A few people stuffed that up this year. The Gold Coast Suns.
Yeah. Not for the first time ever, but getting smashed in the Q clash to the tune of 73 points. Mentioned obviously the Bombers. Melbourne go to 9-0. They're going amazingly. It's a 26-point win over Carlton, and West Coast accounted for Adelaide with a 5-goal win in the West. So
I think the Crows are pretty good in that game. From what I saw, I think there was a 17-minute period in the second quarter where Jack Darling kicked 5 goals in the second quarter.
In the second quarter alone?
One quarter he kicked 5 goals.
That's the game there.
Yeah,
so.
And other than that, they'd pretty much matched West Coast's score. So a tick for Adelaide. They don't need to keep winning games. They just need to keep showing effort and developing their
Playing the kids, yeah.
Absolutely. And no Tex as well, who accounts for 43% of their goals this year, which is an amazing stat.
Yeah, that reminds me that West Coast 5-goal haul from Darling. Reminds me in 2018 when we played The Eagles went up by 15 in the last quarter. TK was going off, and then
The team that didn't want him. We've mentioned that before.
And then West Coast kicked like 6 goals in 7 minutes.
Yeah,
it was unbelievable. It was an
nuts,
absolute.
The one interstate game I've been to at that point in time.
Yeah,
so
good times.
Good. Dad was halfway back to the airport at that stage.
How'd you get home?
Yeah, I just
had to walk back from the west.
From WA.
Some big games coming up for round 10 already.
Absolutely, mate. We'll get through our tips, and then we've got Shorty's mailed in tips, and then I've got Chook's ones as well. So
we're faxed in. So
absolutely faxed in
from
smoke signalled in, carrier pigeoned in,
Morse code.
Tips in a bottle that's been thrown in the ocean.
Yes, please.
All right, so we've got Brisbane and Richmond Friday night at the Gabron. Gee willikers, if the Richmond win this, I'll spew up, because they should have. They honestly, as we've mentioned before, and don't take our hate for Richmond as pure hate, but just from a general football fan point of view, you never want someone going back to back to back, and just general football pundits don't want one team to be winning it every year. But the Giants could have knocked Richmond pretty well out of, I wouldn't say
unconscious,
the 8, but definitely the top 4.
Yep.
But if Richmond win this, they're right back in it, mate. They'll be 6-4, I believe, instead of 4-6. So it's going to be huge. But I've gone Brisbane because they're in ripper form. They should make this 6 straight by 22 points.
Yeah, good call. Oh yeah, of course the margin there. Brisbane for mine as well. Obviously the home ground's a big one. Traditionally Richmond have done amazingly well. They've probably won. Obviously Brisbane won in the final last year, but outside of that, I think they hadn't lost to them
13 games
since
or
2004.
Something.
I think was the last time that Brisbane defeated them. So they've definitely got the wood over them. But I think Brisbane, without as many injuries as Richmond and 5 of their best midfielders out, you'd like to think Brisbane, by a few goals. Richmond will take it right up to them as they do, but hopefully Richmond can be capable of 10 plus games winning streaks. So you've just got to. Yeah, we've got to make it as hard as possible for them to make it in the top 4.
The general competition.
When you lose a grand final to them, you don't exactly like them. And when you see a team winning all the time and winning premierships all the time, you don't like them.
Absolutely. And then we've got on the Saturday, we've got the Melbourne Cricket Ground, Carlton versus Hawthorne. Carlton need to get the job done here.
Yeah, I think Carlton can't afford to lose this one. Hawthorne not playing great footy, but I think Carlton would probably just a bit better on paper, but
would there be questions asked of Carlton if they lose this?
Oh, if Hawthorn losing to North up in Tassie, their home deck, I think it's going to be very big questions will be
interesting.
Asked. Big questions will be asked if Carlton lose.
Righto. Geelong versus Gold Coast at GMHBA Stadium on the Saturday. Probably Geelong's a safe bet here.
Yeah, I like Geelong at GMHBA. They play good footy there. Hopefully play better than they did against Saints. Otherwise, Gold Coast will make it very hard for us.
I think Gold Coast's good form is run out now for the year.
I hope so, yeah.
They've really dropped off, unfortunately, but they've been quite injured as well.
Yep.
Adelaide versus Melbourne at the Adelaide Oval. Probably safe to say Melbourne again here.
Yeah, Melbourne. Melbourne just. I think the Crows will probably challenge them, and Z's can't keep winning forever. So, I think Melbourne a bit more bankable at the moment.
Absolutely. The Dogs and St Kilda at Marvel Stadium. This should be an absolute shootout, but the Dogs for me.
These are always corker games, and the final last year was no exception.
Yep.
But the Western Bulldogs, hard to go past them. They're in ripping touch, and the Saints a bit hot and cold.
Remember that game where St Kilda came back from like 48 points down or something in
55 points in 2017
Jack
or
Billings
16.
kicked 4 goals in the second half or something. It was insane.
Crazy.
Fremantle and Sydney at Optus Stadium. Now, if Fremantle are worth their salt, they would win this game.
You've been driving their van all season and last year.
I have. I'm not driving the van this time. I've tipped Sydney, but if they're worth anything in the context of this season, they will win this game.
I have more faith in Sydney.
Yep.
Obviously, Freo didn't go too well in the West against the Eagles recently. But Sydney, they just find a way, and they're such a good side, then they will be playing finals, and I think they will win with their structure and systems in place.
Yep. The Giants and West Coast, the Giants Stadium, this one was hard to pick, but I think with the Green and Perryman injuries now, you've got to tip West Coast.
I initially had the Giants, but obviously with those are some massive injuries. I'll go West Coast, but only just not with a lot of confidence there.
Port and Collingwood at the MCG.
very rarely tip based off injuries as well. Port Adelaide, massive game. I think they'll get the job done, but yeah, Pies will definitely challenge. But I think Port are too good and will respond.
Absolutely. And Essendon and North Melbourne at Marble Stadium. This is always an interesting game as well.
Never know who to pick.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tip Essendon.
Yeah. I think the Dons have been in good form all year. They've just had a lot of losses, unfortunately. So
yeah, North could definitely... it's going to be a close game. North could definitely be right up for the game, and anything's possible in that game. So, it's always hard to pick.
Chook's gone very similar in his tips here. So Lions, Blues, Cats, Demons, Dogs, Freo, Giants over West Coast.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe he hasn't heard the green news, but maybe that's just a Chook tip. Port and the Bombers. And then we've got Chorty's tips here just to finish us off.
Gentlemen, back with some tips. I think last week proved pretty similar. Doggies and Port, probably the only one that we may have differed on, but this week there's a couple interesting ones. I'm going the Lions to beat the Tigers in a ripping Friday night game. Got Carlton over Hawthorne. Geelong should take care of the Suns. Melbourne to go over and beat the Crows. Dogs to take care of St Kilda. And I'm going Fremantle to beat Sydney. I just wonder if there might be a couple of Swans tips floating around. Tough one. And then this next one, I reckon it's the toughest around. Giants and the Eagles. I've gone the Eagles at the moment, but that one, that's a soft tip. I think we'll just wait and see how that develops over the week. But also going to go Port Adelaide to beat Collingwood, the Bombers to beat North Melbourne. Cheers.
Some interesting thoughts there from D Short.
Just sensational from the team at AFL Unlimited.
We're AFL Limited today because we've got half our team here, but
2 or 4.
That pretty much does us.
Yeah,
Good
it was
job.
just a pleasure catching up, mate. Just talking a bit of footy and
Doing all the work for half the pay.
all the best to Chook on recovering from his laid out and medical injury late. So
and suck egg Short for being at work.
Absolutely everybody. So
absolutely everybody. Thank you for listening, guys. Make sure you're following us on all our platforms to catch all of our content and audio. We do appreciate all the comments that you do leave, so please feel free to continue doing so, and we'll try and communicate over them during the podcasts.
Communicative communications.
Otherwise, thank you for listening, and you'll catch us next week.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode. Make sure you follow us on Facebook and Twitter. AFL Unlimited, because footy is limitless.